Hey folks, hey, Brad Miller with you today, and we're going to show you how to tie up some of the Lefty's Poppin' bugs poppers. And there's a couple of things about them that I think that you should probably be aware of. What you can see right here are the different sizes of the popping bugs that we have. This one here happens to be the big Magnum offshore one with a big stainless steel hook on it. The medium size, I'm using these are using 4X, excuse me, these are using 4X long streamer hooks for these poppers. And the reason why you can get away with a little bit heavier hook on these poppers is because the body is sort of elongated and it provides a little bit more flotation, especially towards the rear of that hook. So that's one of the reasons you can get away with it. Now, I've also showing you a panfish size mini one, and I've actually got this one on a size 6 kink shanked hook, and so you'd probably want to use a size 6 mustad streamer hook for the panfish size if you were going to make them saltwater. But you can just see how simple it is. I like to use the kink shank for a lot of freshwater applications. This happens to be a size 6 kink shank. As you can see, it fits on that fly pretty well. One of the characteristics of my poppers that I always like, and I always tell people to look for, is to make sure you've got plenty of shaft coming out the rear end of that hook. A lot of times the shafts on these poppers that you see will be something like that. They'll be close to the rear end of the body of the fly, and I think that body of the popper will impede on the chances of that fish getting a good hook set. So make sure you got plenty of room behind that fly in your poppers to allow the fish to chomp on that thing. I mean, you're going to have feathers and some other things back here, but that's a very common error with a lot of poppers. So what I like to do is I like to tie up a bunch of these at one sitting. So I'll just take and watching TV or whatever else, and I'll just go ahead and pre-wrap a bunch of shanks. And I like to use thread that I've got laying around that I probably don't use too much. So for example, I've got some of this red thread laying around and sitting there in my fly tying area. I never use it. So I'm going to use it for the to pre-wrap the shanks. Why do I want to pre-wrap the shanks? Is because we need an interface here for the glue to adhere to that will provide a little bit better substrate than if you just went metal to the foam itself. So I'll just provide, that's exactly what we're doing here with this pre-wrapping with the hooks. And I think it's pretty important to do that. Now, what I'm going to do is put on, I'm going to do it the down and dirty fast way. I'm going to put on a bead of, this is Zap-A-Gap. If you want to really make them durable, you can use 5-minute epoxy. Now notice how I'm twisting that on. Let me get you a little bit closer here. Notice how I just take and I twirl that body onto the shaft and then bring it forward so just the eye is sticking out. Now the other thing to do here, as while it's still movable, is to check it and make sure that you have it aligned properly, you know, with the bottom of the hook. Check that before it. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and I'll put on a bunch of bodies and then set them aside and allow them to dry before I'll start to tie with them. Now the other thing, excuse me, the other thing that you're going to want to do with this is you're going to want to always have my handy dandy pliers handy, and if you have barbs on your hooks, make sure you take a second and pinch those barbs down, because that'll help in the removal of the popper. So that's starting to set up there, and that's starting to look pretty decent. Okay, so now I'm just going to add a couple of things today. What I'm going to use for a tail material, you know, a lot of you have seen me tie the roadkill ones, and I do like Squirrel Tail a lot. The thing I like about Squirrel Tail is that the fibers are relatively stiff. You can use bucktail, you can use marabou. I don't particularly like anything that's too soft. because I think it has a tendency to wrap around the shank of the hook. So in this particular application today, actually, I'm going to use something a little bit different. I'm going to use some of this Rainey's craft fur that I've got. And this is kind of a cross between sort of marabou and bucktail. So it actually works pretty well. So I'm going to take off a chunk of that. Very easy to work with. And I kind of size it and kind of pull out the other one. I kind of size it. This is going to be a fairly good sized fly. So I'm going to cut that down to about that length. Set that aside for a second. Take my bobbin, tie on a little bit of thread. And this baby is just about solid on there now. And take my tail material. These things are so easy to tie, man. You can tie up a whole bunch of these real fast. Let's do a lazy loop to get that started, and then get that on there. Now also, if you want to go ahead on these, the thing I like about the craft fur is it's kind of got a certain amount of, and you can actually trim it in the back too. The craft fur's got a certain amount of sparkle built into it, so you don't necessarily have to add some extra sparkle material if you don't want to, but surely if you do, you can lay in a little bit of some kind of sparkle material either before or after you put the tail on. It's a personal preference thing. I think the sparkle in many cases helps add a little bit extra to it. Now for the collar on this, I often like to use hackle, but today I'm going to make them real down and dirty. I'm just going to throw on some of this Estes. Actually, this is, yeah, I think this is Estes. Just the sparkle chenille is all it is. And I could take the rotary vise and I could twirl it if I want to, but I just really have a small piece of it there. Okay, and I'm going to tie that off. Now, for those of you that have not learned how to do a whip finish with your fingers, you can very slowly watch me do this. I'm kind of rotating my fingers, and let me take it back just a little bit. You can see a couple more. I'm just emulating a whip finisher, but with my fingers, and sometimes on the back of these poppers it helps to do it that way. So I'm going to get that good and tight, take my scissors, pop that off. Now if you want to put eyes on them, for example, now you can go ahead and glue them on there, but what I like to do is, if I'm using these Spirit River ones, use some sort of pinchers like this, and then pull the eye off of there, and then place it directly on, and then just press it on. Okay. These things have a tendency to get kind of sticky, and you don't really want them to hit your fingers like that, because we got oil on our fingers, and that will reduce the stickability, the adherence of these things. So a couple of quick eyes like that. You can see you got yourself a nice popper. That's not solid yet. I'll almost always let that 5-minute epoxy set overnight, because once it's inside a tunnel like that, it takes it longer for it to cure. So that's a medium-sized bass popper right there on a stainless steel hook that's going to catch a lot of fish of a lot of different types. I mean, this type of a popper could be used for saltwater especially. You could use it for bass and almost any kind of inshore or offshore type fish. Very deadly and very durable. So check out these Lefty's Poppin bugs at flybass.biz. Thanks much. See you soon.